The last message on Emily Carter's phone wasn't a goodbye. It was a promise. A soft, confident line that read like devotion, like safety, like someone reaching through the dark to pull her close. And for a while, she believed it. Because when you're 16 and your world has just split in two, anything that feels steady can look like love. Emily grew up in a home where laughter came easily. Her mother, Sarah Carter, kept the kitchen warm with music and small routines, tea in the evening, candles on the table even on ordinary nights. Her father, Michael, was the kind of man who fixed things with his hands and made people feel protected just by being near him. They weren't perfect, but they were present. Emily had friends she'd known since childhood, teachers who liked her, a bedroom full of little comforts, photos, notebooks, a half-finished collage taped to the wall. Then the separation happened. It wasn't one dramatic explosion. It was weeks of quiet tension, doors closing softly, voices dropping into whispers, long pauses where answers should have been. The day Michael moved out, the air in the house changed. Sarah tried to keep it normal, but her smile looked tired. Emily started spending more time alone, headphones in, phone in hand, scrolling until her eyes blurred. Some nights she lay in bed listening to the plumbing knock and the wind scrape the window, wondering which half of her family she belonged to now. That's when Daniel Reed appeared. He wasn't in her grade. He wasn't even in her school. He was older, 22, and he showed up like a spotlight. They met through a friend of a friend at a small gathering, the kind of casual hangout where adults didn't really hover and everyone pretended it was harmless. Daniel had a calm voice and an easy grin. He looked at Emily like she was the only person in the room. Not the way boys her age looked, quick, uncertain, eager to impress. Daniel's attention was steady, deliberate, and it wrapped around her like a blanket. "You don't deserve to feel alone," he told her that first night, as if he could see the exact shape of the ache she'd been hiding. When Emily got home, she expected the moment to fade the way most moments did. But her phone buzzed before she even changed into pajamas. "Did you make it home safe?" Then again. "I can't stop thinking about you." Then again, late enough that the house was fully asleep. "Talk to me. I like hearing your voice." At first, it felt flattering, more than flattering. It felt like someone had chosen her. Like she'd been singled out from the messy, confusing crowd of her life and placed somewhere special. Within days, Daniel became constant. He sent good morning messages before school and good night messages after. He asked what she ate, how her day was, who made her laugh, who annoyed her. He praised her, her thoughts, her taste in music, the way she wrote. When Emily said she felt weird about her parents, he didn't offer cheesy advice. He listened. He told her it wasn't her fault. He told her she was mature and different. And Emily, aching, raw, desperate for stability, started leaning into it. The first time he picked her up, it was a simple drive. Nothing dramatic. He had the car clean, the music low, the air smelling faintly like mint gum. He opened her door. He looked at her hands when she talked. He asked her dreams like they mattered. She told herself she was lucky. Her friends didn't think so. At lunch, her best friend, Chloe, wrinkled her nose when Emily mentioned him. "Isn't he older?" Emily shrugged, forcing casual. "It's not like that." Chloe's eyes narrowed. "It's exactly like that." Later, another friend said, "Just be careful, Em." Emily laughed it off with a practiced roll of her eyes. But Daniel noticed the shift in her tone that afternoon, the thin edge of defensiveness. He always noticed. "Your friends don't understand you," he said, voice soft as velvet. "They want to keep you small. They don't want you to grow up." Emily didn't answer right away. She stared out the window, watching streetlights smear into glowing lines as the car moved. Daniel reached over and brushed his knuckles lightly against her wrist, barely a touch, but it made her skin tighten. I'm the only one who's actually on your side, he added. It wasn't said like a threat. It was said like comfort. And that's how it began. Not with shouting. Not with fear. With reassurance. With us. Soon Daniel started building rules that didn't sound like rules. He'd frown when her phone lit up with Chloe's name. He'd sigh when she mentioned going to a movie with friends. He'd make jokes, little comments that landed like tiny stones in her stomach. Chloe loves drama. Your friends are kind of childish. Why do you need them when you have me? Emily would argue at first, lightly, playfully, until she realized he didn't like it when she pushed back. His face would change, his warmth dimming into quiet disappointment. And Emily hated disappointing him. So she adjusted. She replied to friends slower. She canceled plans more often. She stopped posting pictures when she was out, because Daniel said people were watching. When Chloe confronted her in the hallway, Emily felt a sharp burst of irritation, at Chloe, not at Daniel. Why are you making this weird? Emily snapped. Chloe's mouth fell open. Because I'm worried about you. Emily walked away, heart pounding, telling herself Chloe was overreacting. Telling herself she was fine. That night Daniel sent a voice note, his tone low and tender. I know it's hard when people don't support what makes you happy, he said. But I'm proud of you for choosing peace. Peace. That word tasted good. Emily started believing that peace meant obedience. The first time Daniel got angry, it came out of nowhere, like a door slamming in a quiet house. Emily was 10 minutes late meeting him after school. Her phone had died during a last-minute quiz, and she'd borrowed a charger from a friend. She jogged to his car, cheeks flushed from cold air, apologizing before she even opened the door. Daniel didn't look at her. He stared ahead, jaw tight. You think my time doesn't matter, he said. Emily blinked. No, Daniel, my phone. He cut her off with a sharp exhale. Excuses. The word hit her like a slap, even though he hadn't touched her. She went quiet. The car filled with the hum of the engine and the faint tick of the turn signal he hadn't bothered to use. Emily's hands twisted in her lap. She tried to swallow the rising panic, tried to make it disappear before he saw it and got worse. I'm sorry, she whispered. Daniel's shoulders loosened as if that was what he needed. He reached over, cupped her chin, and finally looked at her. There she is, he murmured. My sweet girl. I care. I worry about you. Relief washed through her so fast it made her dizzy. That was the pattern before Emily even recognized it as a pattern: tension, fear, apology, comfort. A storm, then a blanket. And the blanket started feeling like the only safe place she had left. At home, Sarah asked questions Emily didn't want to answer. Who are you texting so much? Where were you after school? Emily responded with clipped words, annoyed sighs, teenage eye rolls, but behind it was something else: guilt. Because Daniel said Sarah was nosy. Daniel said parents tried to control. Daniel said Emily needed privacy to grow. So Emily started hiding her screen. She started lying about where she'd been. She started forgetting what honesty felt like. One evening, Michael called to check on her. His voice sounded tired, like he'd been working late again. He asked about school. Asked if she wanted to have dinner with him this weekend. Emily stared at the wall while he talked, Daniel's earlier words echoing in her head. He left. He doesn't get to play hero now. Maybe, Emily muttered. Michael paused. Emily, are you okay? She almost told him the truth right then. Almost said, I don't know what's happening to me. But then Daniel texted. Don't let him guilt you. He made his choice. Emily swallowed. I'm fine, she said, too quickly. After she hung up, the room felt colder. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice, small, easy to ignore, whispered that something was wrong. But Daniel messaged again, filling the silence with affection. "Come see me tomorrow. I miss you already." Emily pressed her phone to her chest like a lifeline, and the whisper inside her faded under the louder, sweeter sound of being wanted. She didn't realize she was already being pulled away from everyone who could have helped her. She only knew that when Daniel paid attention, the ache of her family breaking apart hurt less. And Daniel, patient, watchful, smiling, was learning exactly how to turn that ache into a leash. By the time autumn arrived, Emily's world had grown noticeably smaller. She didn't mark it on a calendar. There was no single day when everything changed. It happened quietly, in skipped lunches, unanswered messages, and friendships that slowly faded without a proper ending. Daniel was always there, though, waiting in his car, calling her late at night, reminding her how much he needed her. At first, the isolation felt accidental. Emily stopped going to birthday parties because Daniel said crowds made him anxious. She missed study groups because he wanted to see her after work. When Chloe stopped texting altogether, Emily told herself it was normal, people drifted, that's what Daniel said. Real connections don't need a crowd, he told her, brushing her hair behind her ear. They need loyalty. Loyalty became his favorite word. Daniel started criticizing the people who remained in Emily's life. Her mother was too controlling. Her father was trying to buy forgiveness. Even teachers weren't safe. That one just likes hearing herself talk, Daniel scoffed after Emily mentioned a guidance counselor. She doesn't care about you. I do. Emily didn't argue anymore. Arguing made things cold. Silence made them worse. The first time he grabbed her arm, it happened so fast she didn't fully process it. She had laughed at something on her phone, a meme from a classmate Daniel didn't like. His hand closed around her wrist, fingers tight enough to sting. "What's so funny?" he asked, smiling without warmth. Emily froze. Her laugh died halfway out of her throat. Nothing. Just something stupid." He released her immediately, like it hadn't happened. Like she'd imagined the pressure. "Don't hide things from me," he said gently. "That's how people get hurt." The drive home was quiet. Emily stared at the faint red marks on her skin, then pulled her sleeve down before anyone could see. That night, Daniel sent messages filled with affection. "I'm sorry if I scared you. I just care too much sometimes. You know I'd never actually hurt you, right?" Emily typed back the words he needed to hear. "I know. I shouldn't have laughed." The apology felt wrong, but also relieving. The tension dissolved, replaced by warmth and reassurance. Daniel told her she was special. That other girls would have walked away, but Emily stayed. "That's why I trust you," he said. And trust, in Daniel's world, meant compliance. As weeks passed, the incidents grew more frequent, and harder to explain away. A shove when she tried to leave an argument. A hand on her shoulder that pressed her down into silence. Words that cut deeper than any bruise. "You make me like this. If you didn't push me, I wouldn't lose control. Do you know how hard I try for you?" Emily began measuring her behavior carefully, like walking across thin ice. She learned which expressions annoyed him, which questions led to lectures, which tones triggered anger. She stopped wearing certain clothes because he said they invited attention. She stopped speaking her mind because it disrespected him. And slowly, terrifyingly, she began to believe him. When she cried, Daniel accused her of manipulation. When she went quiet, he accused her of plotting. There was no safe response, only better ones, ones that delayed the explosion. At school, teachers noticed she'd changed. Emily's grades slipped. She jumped at sudden noises. Once, during class, a boy accidentally bumped her chair, and she flinched so hard the room went silent. When the teacher asked if she was okay, Emily nodded too quickly. "I'm just tired." That was easier than the truth. At home, Sarah noticed the long sleeves, even on warm days. She noticed how Emily locked her phone, how she stiffened when asked about Daniel. "Is he good to you?" Sarah asked one evening, trying to sound casual. Emily's heart raced. "He's fine," she snapped. "Why are you always interrogating me?" Sarah fell quiet, hurt flashing across her face. That night, Daniel praised Emily for standing up for their relationship. "She wants to control you," he said. "But you're not a little girl anymore." Emily lay awake afterward, staring at the ceiling, wondering when exactly she'd stopped feeling like one. The violence escalated not all at once, but enough that Emily stopped questioning whether it counted. Slaps turned into grips. Shouts turned into threats whispered inches from her face. Once, after an argument, Daniel shoved her against the wall so hard her head rang. He stood there breathing heavily, eyes wild, then suddenly collapsed into tears. "I hate myself," he sobbed. "I don't deserve you." Emily slid down the wall beside him, arms shaking as she wrapped them around his shoulders. "It's okay," she whispered. "I shouldn't have said that." Daniel looked up at her then, relieved. "That's my girl." By winter, Emily no longer recognized the person she used to be. She rarely laughed. She barely spoke to anyone outside of Daniel. Her world revolved around avoiding his anger and earning his affection. And when she started feeling sick in the mornings, when her jeans felt tight and her body unfamiliar, fear bloomed in her chest like ice. The pregnancy test turned positive almost immediately. Emily sat on the bathroom floor, shaking, staring at the thin pink lines as if they might disappear if she looked hard enough. When she told Daniel, his reaction wasn't anger at first. It was silence. He paced the room, jaw clenched, hands flexing like he was holding something invisible. "This can't happen," he said finally. Emily's voice was barely audible. "I'm keeping it." The room went very still. Daniel stopped pacing and looked at her, not with affection, not with fear, but with something cold and calculating. "You don't get to decide that," he said. And in that moment, Emily realized something terrifying. The man who claimed to love her had never seen her as a person at all. Daniel's behavior changed the moment Emily refused. There was no shouting at first. No slammed doors. Just a sharp, unsettling calm that settled over him like frost. He stopped touching her unless necessary. His messages became short, stripped of affection. When Emily tried to talk about doctor appointments or school, he waved it away like an inconvenience. "You're being dramatic," he said. "This will ruin everything." Emily felt trapped inside her own body. The sickness worsened. Mornings became a battle with nausea and dizziness, afternoons a blur of exhaustion. She stopped going to school altogether, telling her mother she had the flu, then migraines, then stress. Sarah hovered, worried, but Emily kept her distance, afraid of what would happen if Daniel thought she was telling people. Daniel made sure she had no space to think. He checked her phone constantly. He drove her everywhere. If she stayed quiet too long, he accused her of plotting against him. "You're trying to trap me," he said one night, voice low and sharp. "That's what this is, isn't it?" Emily shook her head, tears slipping down her face. "I just want the baby to be safe." Daniel laughed, a short, humorless sound. "You don't even know what safe is." The violence returned, heavier now. More deliberate. When he hurt her, he didn't panic afterward anymore. He didn't apologize. He explained. "You stress me out. You don't listen. This is what happens when you push." Emily learned to dissociate, staring at a crack in the wall, counting her breaths, waiting for it to end. She told herself that if she stayed calm, if she didn't resist, it would pass faster. Sometimes Daniel would sit beside her afterward, scrolling his phone, as if nothing had happened. Other times, he'd whisper warnings into her hair. "If you ever leave me," he said once, almost tenderly, "you'll regret it." Emily believed him. She thought about running. About telling her mother. About going to the police. But every option felt impossible. Daniel knew where she lived. He knew her routine. He knew her fears. And he reminded her constantly that no one would believe her. "You chose this," he said. "Everyone will see that." The breaking point came during a quiet afternoon, gray clouds pressing low against the sky. Daniel told Emily they needed to talk somewhere private, away from interference. He said it would be good for her. Good for them. "I know a place," he said. Quiet. No one around. Something in his tone made Emily's stomach tighten. She hesitated, just for a second. "Can we go tomorrow?" Daniel's eyes hardened. "Get your jacket." The drive was long and silent. They left the main roads, turning onto narrower paths where houses thinned and trees crowded close. Emily watched the scenery change, her pulse pounding louder with every mile. "Where are we going?" she asked. Daniel didn't answer. They stopped near an isolated clearing, the ground uneven, the air damp and cold. Emily stepped out of the car slowly, every instinct screaming at her to run, but her legs felt heavy, unresponsive. Daniel walked ahead, gesturing for her to follow. "This ends today," he said. Emily's heart hammered. "What does that mean?" He turned to her then, face twisted with anger she'd never seen before. "It means you don't get to ruin my life." Emily backed away, hands raised instinctively. "Daniel, please. I won't tell anyone. I swear." He lunged. The world narrowed to sound and sensation, her breath tearing from her chest, the ground cold beneath her knees, the crushing pressure around her throat. Emily fought weakly, panic flooding her body, thoughts scattering into fragments. "Mom. Please. I want to live." Daniel's grip tightened, loosened, tightened again, methodical, controlled. He watched her struggle like it was something to manage, not stop. Time lost meaning. The sky blurred above her, gray bleeding into white. When it was over, Daniel stood, breathing hard, looking down without a trace of regret. Later, when it was too quiet, he made a phone call. His voice was calm. "I need help," he said. "Now." Daniel's younger brother, Luke Reed, answered the phone on the third ring. Luke was 19, quiet, impressionable, and still desperate for his older brother's approval. He'd spent his whole life living in Daniel's shadow, cleaning up his messes, believing his excuses. When Daniel told him there was an emergency, Luke didn't ask questions. He grabbed his jacket and drove. When Luke arrived, the clearing was silent. Too silent. Daniel stood near the car, pacing. His hands shook as he lit a cigarette he didn't finish. He pointed toward the trees without speaking. Luke followed his gaze, and stopped cold. Emily lay motionless on the ground, her hair tangled with leaves, her face pale and still. For a moment, Luke's brain refused to understand what his eyes were seeing. "Daniel," he whispered. "What did you do?" Daniel turned on him instantly. "You don't ask questions," he snapped. "You help me. Or you ruin both our lives." Luke staggered back, panic clawing at his chest. "She's just a kid." Daniel stepped closer, voice dropping. "And your family. That means you do what I say." Luke shook, tears welling. He wanted to run. He wanted to scream. But Daniel kept talking, fast, forceful, spinning a web of fear and obligation. "They'll blame you too," he said. You were here. You helped me before. They'll never believe you didn't know. Luke knew it wasn't true. But fear doesn't listen to logic. Together, under Daniel's commands, they worked. There was an old grave nearby, unmarked, forgotten, dug years earlier for someone whose remains had been moved. Daniel knew about it. He'd planned for contingencies long before that day. Luke's hands trembled as he helped, his mind screaming that this couldn't be real. The ground was cold and damp. Every sound felt too loud. He kept expecting headlights to appear, voices to break the silence. But no one came. When it was done, Daniel wiped his hands on his jeans and exhaled slowly. "It's over," he said. Luke stared at the disturbed earth, feeling like he'd left part of himself there. "No," he whispered. "It's not." Daniel drove Luke home in silence, then issued final instructions. "You forget today," he said. "You weren't with me. You didn't see anything." Luke nodded numbly. Daniel believed the worst was behind him. He was wrong. Emily's disappearance didn't go unnoticed. When she failed to come home that night, Sarah Carter called her phone again and again. Each unanswered ring tightened the knot in her chest. By morning, fear had turned to certainty, something was wrong. She called the police. At first, officers treated it as a runaway. Teenagers left home sometimes, they said. But Sarah refused to accept it. Emily hadn't taken clothes. Her backpack was still in her room. Her prenatal vitamins sat untouched on the bathroom counter. She wouldn't leave, Sarah said, voice breaking. Not like this. As hours turned into days, the search expanded. Friends were interviewed. Teachers were questioned. Daniel's name surfaced quickly, an older boyfriend no one seemed to like. Detectives noted the pattern immediately: isolation, control, sudden disappearance. Daniel told police he hadn't seen Emily in days. His answers were smooth, rehearsed. But something didn't sit right. He contradicted himself on small details: times, locations, tone. Then came the taxi driver. He contacted police after seeing Emily's photo on the news. He remembered picking her up weeks earlier, quiet, nervous, glancing over her shoulder. He remembered dropping her off near Daniel's place. And he remembered something else. A heated argument in the car. Daniel's voice sharp. Emily crying softly, apologizing over and over. That tip changed everything. Investigators obtained phone records. Messages. Location data. A timeline began to form, and it led straight back to the remote area Daniel had tried to erase from the story. Under mounting pressure, Luke cracked. He came in shaking, eyes hollow, barely able to speak. When he finally told them where to look, he broke down completely. "I didn't want to," he sobbed. "He made me." Search teams moved quickly. They found the grave. And with it, the truth Daniel could no longer bury. The search team worked in silence. No one spoke as the soil was carefully removed, layer by layer, until the outline became unmistakable. The air felt heavy, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. When Emily was finally uncovered, even seasoned investigators had to turn away. She had been hidden, but not forgotten. Forensic specialists confirmed what detectives already suspected. Emily had been restrained, then repeatedly strangled. The injuries told a grim story of prolonged suffering, not a moment of rage. It had taken time. It had been deliberate. Sarah Carter was informed that evening. She collapsed before the words were fully spoken. There would be no goodbye. No chance to hear her daughter's voice again. Only the unbearable knowledge that Emily's final moments had been filled with fear, and that she had faced them alone. Daniel Reed was arrested the next morning. He didn't resist. He didn't cry. He sat in the interrogation room with his arms crossed, expression flat, insisting it had been an accident. He claimed Emily had panicked. That he had only tried to calm her down. That everything had gone wrong too fast. Experts later dismantled that lie piece by piece. Medical testimony showed pauses between injuries, clear signs of control and awareness. Digital evidence showed Daniel searching for remote locations days before Emily disappeared. Messages recovered from his phone revealed threats, manipulation, and a growing obsession with avoiding consequences. Luke's testimony sealed it. On the stand, his voice trembled as he described the phone call, the clearing, the grave. He admitted his role in concealing the body, but made it clear who had been in control. "I was scared of him my whole life," Luke said. "I still am." The courtroom was packed throughout the trial. Some came out of curiosity. Others came in quiet solidarity, holding photos of Emily, wearing ribbons in her favorite color. Daniel showed no remorse. When confronted with evidence, he shrugged. When Emily's messages were read aloud, apologies, fear, pleas, he stared straight ahead. He blamed stress. He blamed circumstances. He blamed Emily. Psychological experts testified that Daniel was fully aware of his actions. There was no loss of control. No break from reality. What he had done was planned, and executed with intent. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. The verdict: guilty of premeditated murder. Daniel Reed was sentenced to life imprisonment. As he was led away, he finally looked toward the gallery, not at Emily's family, not at Luke, but at the floor, as if still refusing to see the damage he'd caused. For Sarah Carter, justice did not bring peace. But it brought truth. And truth was something Daniel could never take away. The sentence echoed through the courtroom, heavy and final. Life imprisonment. For a moment, no one moved. Not Daniel. Not the attorneys. Not the families seated on opposite sides of the room, separated by grief that could never be equal. The judge's words settled into the silence like dust after a collapse. Everything changed, yet nothing was fixed. Daniel was led away without looking back. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited, cameras raised, voices calling out questions that had no good answers. Sarah Carter walked past them without stopping, her face pale, her hands clenched around a folded photograph of Emily taken years earlier, before fear had crept into her eyes, before love had become a weapon. In the weeks that followed, Emily's story spread far beyond the courtroom. Schools held assemblies. Counselors spoke to students about warning signs, about isolation disguised as romance, control disguised as care. Parents listened differently now. Friends checked in more often. Some admitted, quietly, that they'd seen pieces of Emily's story in their own lives. Luke Reed accepted a plea deal for his role in concealing the body. His sentence was lighter, but the weight he carried was not. He cut contact with his brother completely. In letters he never sent, he wrote apologies he knew would never be enough. "I should have stopped him," he told a therapist once. "I should have been braver." The words haunted him. Daniel disappeared into the prison system, stripped of control, stripped of the power he had built his identity on. Psychological evaluations continued to confirm what the court had already decided: he understood exactly what he had done. He simply believed he was entitled to do it. He never expressed remorse. Emily was laid to rest on a quiet afternoon, the sky overcast, the air still. Her friends brought handwritten notes, small objects she'd loved, music lyrics, pressed flowers, a bracelet she'd once given away and someone had saved. Sarah stood at the graveside long after everyone else had gone, listening to the wind move through the trees. She spoke out later, not because it was easy, but because it mattered. She didn't make bad choices, Sarah said at a community event months later. She was targeted. She was manipulated. And she deserved help, not judgment. Emily's name became part of conversations that saved other girls before it was too late. That was the legacy Daniel never planned for. Because while he took her life, he did not take her voice. And in the quiet moments, when parents listen more closely, when someone recognizes control before it turns into danger, Emily is still there. A reminder. A warning. And a reason to never look away.